Hi there. I'm Professor Jonathan Singer. I'm the Vice Chair of the Cat A bargaining team, negotiating on behalf of full-time and partial load faculty at Ontario's 24 public colleges. And this is the first of a series of videos on SWIFs, what they record, how to read them, and how to identify and correct any errors in your workload assignment. This video will feature an overview of the SWIF and look at what's included on the front of the SWIF or above the line, depending on your college. Our collective agreement spells out the workload maxima for full-time faculty, specifically teaching faculty, professors, or instructors. These workload maxima are spelled out in Article 11 of our collective agreement, and I've included links to English and French versions of the collective agreement. In Article 11, specifically 1101b1, says that total workload assigned and attributed by the college to a teacher shall not exceed 44 hours in any week for up to 36 weeks in which they are teaching contact hours for teachers in post-secondary programs, and for up to 38 weeks in which they are teaching contact hours in the case of teachers not in post-secondary programs. So that is the upper limit. Workload cannot exceed 44 hours in any week at all. And that's not including overtime. Voluntary signed overtime can go up to an additional 3 hours or an additional 1 teaching contact hour beyond that. So if the limit is 44 hours in any week, how do you measure workload in order to ensure that the workload can in fact be completed in 44 hours or less in any week? And that's where the SWIF comes in. SWIF, or in some cases SWIFT or SWOOF, depending on who you're talking to, stands for Standard Workload Form. It's a way of measuring and recording assigned work during periods of assigned teaching. And the collective agreement says that it shall include all details of the total workload. So that means everything that you have to do in the course of the semester must be recorded somewhere on the SWIF. And if it's not recorded on the SWIF, then you don't have to do it. It is not part of your workload assignment. And that includes, let's say, meetings, welcome back meetings, open houses, coordinator duties. If these are not listed specifically on the SWIF, then they do not need to be completed. They're not part of your workload assignment. And if you are doing that work, then you are likely doing a voluntary overtime, not recognized, not paid, not compensated, and not counted. So the SWIF is there to establish and measure the time that you've been assigned and attributed to do each part of your workload in order to ensure that the workload doesn't exceed the 44-hour maximum in any week. So it does that by looking at the 4 components of our workload. Teaching contact hours, the amount of time that we spend teaching in the classroom or online. Each hour consisting of 15 minutes and a break. Class preparation, the time that we are attributed to prepare each of the teaching contact hours. And those variables include how recently you've taught the class before, or the makeup of the students in the class, or whether you're teaching more than one section of the same class. I'll be looking at class preparation and how that is factored and counted in the next video, video number 2. In video number 3, I'll be looking at evaluation and feedback, which is measured by looking at the types of evaluation required by the learning outcomes of the course. And number 4, complementary functions, which is everything other than the act of teaching, preparing, evaluating the students in your assigned classes. It includes routine out-of-class assistance to students. It includes normal administrative tasks, but it also includes absolutely everything else that you are assigned in the course of the period covered by the SWIF. Then it could include meetings, program review, course development, providing guidance to instructors, coordinator duties, and a wide range of other things. So to look at the SWIF, As I said, the front of the SWIFT typically covers the work that is associated with teaching, assigned courses, and the attributions for preparation and evaluation associated with those assigned courses. And probably your SWIFT looks something like this generally. Every college appears to be a little bit different, so it probably doesn't look exactly like this, but you will notice near the top that it will include a period covered by the SWIFT, and it will also identify any exceptions, any non-teaching periods within that range. This is a fairly confusing chart, so I'm going to try to simplify it by breaking it down into its different parts on the next slide. And I'm going to note the 4 colors, pink, blue, yellow, and green. Those 4 colors refer to the 4 components of our workload that I just identified in the previous slide. Pink for assigned courses, blue for preparation, yellow for evaluation and feedback, and green for complementary functions. And when you add those 4 up, you would get, what's the purple column, the totals for all of the work that has been assigned to you in the course of the SWIFT period, weekly, and it should not exceed 44 hours weekly unless you have consented in writing to overtime of up to 3 hours. So to look at this quickly, the component parts, looking at the pink sections, these 3 columns here, it identifies the 5 sections that have been assigned. In this case, it is 5 sections with 3 different preps, NUR 102, HTH 306, 2 sections of that, and 2 sections of NUT 205. It also includes the number of teaching contact hours, which in this case is different for NUT 205. And it includes the language of instruction. And if you look on the bottom row, you'll notice that there will be a weekly total of the number of hours that are assigned teaching contact hours, in this case, 13. Moving on to the blue columns, these columns are for preparation. And if you want to skip ahead to the very end or the bottom, you can see that for all 5 of those sections, this SWIFT attributes 8.25 hours, that's 8 hours and 15 minutes, each week as a maximum for preparation. Now, this column here is for additional attributed hours, hours that can be assigned by your supervisor or manager if the 8.25 hours based on the formula in the collective agreement is not adequate to the preparation needs of your sections. I'll be talking about how these preparation hours are calculated more in the second video on preparation, but what I will say is right now you can see that each of the 5 sections that are assigned has a number of hours for preparation that are assigned for it. So NUR 102, the one section of that course has 3 hours and 20 minutes, approximately 3.3 hours each week for preparation. And HTH 306 section AA has 1.8 hours each week assigned for preparation. And the next section, BB, a repeat section, has just over 1 hour assigned weekly. So between you can add up the attributed hours and the additional attributed hours to arrive at a total number of hours for preparation for each section for each week. And then you can find the totals for all of the sections each week in the columns on the bottom row. Moving on to evaluation and feedback, I'll be talking about these formulas, which are fairly complicated, in video number 3. But again, I'm going to direct you, first of all, to the bottom, the weekly totals, which say that between the attributed hours based on the formulas in the collective agreement and the additional attributed hours, which may have been assigned by your manager or supervisor, these 5 sections, the SWIFT provides for a total of 14.39 hours each week to evaluate and provide feedback to the students. These hours are based on a formula that includes class sizes, which are identified on the SWIF, as well as the breakdown of the different types of evaluation required by the curriculum and the learning outcomes in the course. So if you see, you can see the number of attributed hours for evaluation and feedback, which are provided for each of the 5 sections separately, and then they are totaled at the bottom to offer a weekly total of hours for evaluation and feedback. And then the green columns, we have the complementary hours, which are the things that are not grounded in teaching classes, teaching, preparing, and evaluating students in classes. They include a minimum allowance of 4 hours for out-of-class assistance to students. That includes email and that includes office hours. Put together, there's a minimum of 4 hours provided for those. And there's also a minimum of 2 hours for normal administrative tasks. Your manager could provide you with more time in order to complete out-of-class assistance for students or normal administrative tasks. But right now, the 6 hours together is the minimum. And then your SWIF will also probably include a column for assigned complementary hours, and that would be absolutely everything else that you are assigned to do, whether it be meetings, whether it be curriculum development, whether it be professional development, whether it be mentoring, whether it be course lead, subject lead, anything of the sort. That would be listed as an assigned complementary hours, and those should be itemized on the back of the SWIF, because if they're not itemized anywhere on the SWIF, then they're not part of your assigned workload. And then if we look, not every college has the column on the right-hand side with totals, but in this case, this 11.25 hours, each of these numbers offers a total for the 5 sections, which is to say the total number of hours that are assigned and attributed for each of the 5 sections, teaching them in the classroom, preparing them, and evaluating the students in that section, all of the students. And so, for example, for NUR 102 AA, that is a total of 11.25 hours each week, which breaks down to 3 assigned teaching contact hours plus 3.3 attributed hours for preparation, brings us to 6.3, plus 4.95 attributed hours for evaluation for that section, brings us to 11.25 hours for all of the work associated with that section of the workload assignment. And the same goes down for each of the other 4 sections. And then added to the total are the totals for complementary functions, including the minimum allowance, the 4 hours of out-of-class assistance to students, the 2 hours of normal administrative tasks, and then the 2 hours for assigned complementary functions, which is to say everything else that is required to do that is not directly related to teaching assigned courses. And that brings us to a total of 43.64 hours. So if in weeks you are working beyond the time provided by the SWIF, then you would end up working more hours than this 43.64. You would end up working more than the SWIF, than the collective agreement permits, and you would end up effectively doing unrecognized and uncompensated overtime. So that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching. Please consider sharing this with your colleagues. The next video, I'll be looking at preparation factors. In video number 3, we'll be looking at evaluation and feedback factors, how they're calculated. In video number 4, we'll be talking a bit more in depth about complementary functions. And in video number 5, we'll talk about how to resolve disputes related to the SWIF. Thank you very much. Take care. This video is intended only for informational purposes for OPSEU CAT academic faculty members and should not be treated as authoritative advice. Also, it should not be introduced in whole or in part in any dispute resolution proceeding. For authoritative advice on the SWIF, please consult your union local or the union-appointed members of your workload monitoring group.